I bust my tail working day and night for 3 months and finally managed to sell over 10 tons of eggs.
But instead of being grateful for the money they made, the villagers completely surrounded my house, blocking every exit. You sold each egg for 60 cents.
But you only gave us 50 cents. Hurry up and hand over that 10-cent difference.
I tried my absolute best to explain it to them,
Telling them that the 10-cent margin was used to keep our clients happy and to cover the cost of online marketing.
but the village chief wouldn't hear it.
He pointed his finger right at my face and barked. That's your own problem. Whatever those eggs sold for is exactly how much you should be paying the villagers
To sell that mountain of eggs piling up in our village.
I created an online account and started live streaming. Streaming for 8 intense hours every single day left my throat raw and aching. I talked so much I was practically gasping for air. At night, I had to treat the cake factory owners to dinner, drinking with them until my stomach bled and I needed a blood transfusion.
I ended up completely unconscious.
Yet despite everything I sacrificed, not a single one of them showed a shred of gratitude. Instead, they clung to that 10-cent margin, sneering, "What you did was downright dirty."
The way they looked at me,
It was as if I were some greedy leech who only cared about herself. In that moment, my heart completely froze. You just sit in front of your phone all day, running your mouth, and you get to pocket 10 cents a pop? With over 10 tons of eggs. Just imagine how much cash you've stolen from us. We bust our backs working from dawn to dusk, slaving away in our chicken coops, just to survive on a few cents of profit. They actually accused me of making dirty blood money. But without me, their precious eggs would have rotted in the dirt. Right in front of my parents, they kept hurling insults at me. You have absolutely no shame. You don't care how hard we have it.
Auntie Lou wiped her tears, sobbing that I was heartless.
My husband is still lying in the hospital, waiting for this money to save his life. Auntie Liu, I personally helped you sell over 1,000 pounds of your eggs. You made thousands of dollars off of that at the very least. How can you sit there and say you have no money for his treatment? And another thing, squeeze out extra profit. You secretly mixed spoiled eggs in with the premium ones. When the customers complained and demanded refunds, I had to pay for your mess out of my own pocket. How can you have the nerve to stand here and accuse me alongside them?
Auntie Lou's face turned pale with guilt.
Who couldn't even look me in the eye. After stammering out a few weak excuses, she slunk back into the crowd.
Munching, cut the crap and just tell us straight.
So you pocketed that 10 cents yourself, didn't you? The village chief demanded, his face dark with suspicion. I didn't try to hide it. I simply nodded. Then, trying to calm the angry crowd, I patiently explained the cost of our live stream team's salaries, the massive budget for online promotions and ads, and what we spent to host factory director Zhao. None of those expenses were cheap. You can't make those mini cakes without eggs. That processing plant helped clear out tons of our village's surplus eggs. Every single cent of that 10-cent markup was spent right back on you guys, not to mention my team. They were so exhausted every day that they'd pass out the second they hit the couch. None of them have even asked for a cut of the profits. They only took a daily wage of 100 yuan. Just to help you all clear your egg inventory, my team and I turned down several major brand sponsorships. Whatever you did, that's your own business. But you owe us that 10-cent difference, and you have to pay us back right now. My parents stepped forward, trying to speak up for me and bring some sense to the crowd. But the village chief snapped, shouting, "Of course you'd say that. She's your daughter." All that money went straight into your family's pockets. No wonder you're taking her side. The villagers started chiming in, whispering and grumbling among themselves. They threw angry glares and sharp words at my parents.
Seeing how utterly unreasonable and ungrateful the chief and the villagers were,
A wave of pure anger surged inside me. We busted our backs working day and night for 3 months without making a single penny. And in the end, we didn't even get a simple thank you. Instead, we're being dragged through the mud and blamed by everyone. Fighting back my tears, I protested. I was only trying to help you. How is it fair that I do all this work out of the goodness of my heart, only to lose my own money in the end? Just then, Zhao Gufang, the village secretary, stepped forward. She crossed her arms and sneered. "Oh, don't play the innocent victim here. People these days don't do anything unless there's something in it for them. If you weren't profiting off of this, why on earth would you sell our goods for free? Who knows how much money you've secretly stolen from us behind our backs?" What was supposed to be a good deed to help the villagers sell their stock had turned into a vicious, coordinated attack against me. I felt utterly heartbroken and defeated. I just stood there in silence. But to them, my silence was proof of a guilty conscience. They thought they had exposed my lies. We have to wake up before dawn every single day just to feed the chickens, cleaning out the chicken coops, slaving away from dawn to dusk. Isn't it all just to make an extra dime or two? A 10-cent profit on every single egg? Selling over 10 tons of eggs means making at least over 100,000 yuan.
Salonchi, what you're doing is really breaking the hearts of your fellow villagers.
You pocketed a 10-cent cut from our hard-earned money right off the bat. Isn't this just deliberately making life hard for everyone? The crowd grows frantic with anger,
their demands turning fierce and uncompromising. It's clear that they won't let this go unless I pay them back every single cent.
Wanchin, please, just give us back our money.
Life is already hard enough for everyone in the village as it is. How can you completely ignore whether we live or die? How can you live with yourself?
As he speaks, he actually collapses right in front of me, weeping and wailing with tears and snot running down his face.
The villagers raise their voices, shouting at the top of their lungs.
She must hand over that money today.
And what about you pulling favors and networking, including those street promotions where you gave away eggs for free?
Every single time, you gave away dozens, even hundreds of pounds. And who ends up paying for all of that in the end?
We do. Over the last 3 months, just how many eggs did you give away? Using the villagers' hard work just to build your own connections and boost your live stream channel's popularity.
This is just way too much. Su Wanqing, how could you do something so shameless?
You must compensate us for all those eggs you gave away to build your network and run promotions.
That's worth at least several thousand yuan.
I only wanted to help more people learn about our village's local specialty.
Why is it so incredibly hard?
The so-called free egg giveaways. At the end of the day, we're all to help everyone build a great reputation for our eggs.
Even the 100,000 yuan spent hiring influencers to promote them was paid entirely by my own live streaming team.
But when it's time to settle the books,
all of this suddenly becomes proof of my own selfishness.
I paid those influencers to endorse us and went through so much trouble to promote our eggs, all out of my own pocket.
How can you all completely ignore that? That's a completely different story.
That doesn't give you the right to pocket a 10-cent cut from your own neighbors.
Is that so? Haha. At this point, I am absolutely furious. I've always been a straightforward person.
I've never been one to tolerate any underhanded deceit. What I did for the villagers goes far beyond helping them clear over 10 tons of leftover egg inventory. I even went out of my way to bring in experts from the Academy of Agricultural Sciences to teach everyone step by step how to raise poultry scientifically
and plan their farms properly.
That doubled the village's egg production overnight. Our eggs became famous across all the surrounding towns for their high quality.
You could say I built this entire egg brand with my own 2 hands.
People from the big cities heard about us and started flocking here, driving for hours just to buy our eggs. But even during our live stream sales,
so many villagers secretly mixed rotten, foul-smelling eggs into the high-quality ones.
At its worst, a full versions of the eggs our buyers received were completely ruined. In the end, it was my live stream team that worked ourselves to the bone and paid out of our own pockets to refund them, just to calm the angry buyers down and save the village's hard-earned reputation.
My dad was trembling with pure rage. He yelled, "In other places, eggs only sell for 50 cents each.
But here, we sell each organic egg for $1.50. My daughter at least made sure you guys didn't lose any money. I cleared over 10 tons of inventory for this village at market price in record time. Being able to sell them for an extra 10 cents is my daughter's own competence.
Ask yourselves, do you have any conscience left?
No. Think
how hot it's been lately.
If those eggs didn't sell, they would have rotted and gone bad. By then, not a single one of you would have made a single penny.
The neighboring village still has tons of eggs they can't get rid of.
The village chief let out a cold snort. Stop talking about all this useless garbage. What about that 10-cent difference? Are you going to give it to us or not? Watching. Everyone here knows you make tons of money from live streaming.
Why don't you show some compassion for your fellow villagers and give them back their money?
If you're going to act like this, who would ever dare to ask for your help again? I bit my lip so hard it almost bled. I was about to pull out my phone and transfer the money directly to the village chief, but my dad reached out and stopped me. My hot-headed refusal to take any injustice is a trait I inherited straight from my dad. Our family is not giving them a single cent. If they want to be unreasonable, then we don't need to back down. My dad's words completely enraged the villagers surrounding our house. Losing all patience, the village chief violently shoved my father, and the crowd behind him surged forward, grabbing and shoving in a chaotic brawl. Things spiraled out of control in an instant. Moat. Even my mother, who was only trying to stop the fight, got dragged into the madness. Both of my elderly parents ended up on the ground, grinning in agonizing pain. I tried with all my might, but I couldn't pull them apart. It wasn't until my parents were beaten unconscious that the mob finally started to back off. Grab everything. Take their stuff to pay their debt. The village chief barked, waving his hand. A swarm of villagers stormed into my home. They looted every single thing of value, leaving us absolutely nothing. My entire body shook violently. It felt like a knife was twisting in my heart. Tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. With trembling fingers, I frantically dialed 911. I poured my heart and soul into saving this village, only to be rewarded with a shattered family and a ruined life. They repaid my kindness with absolute malice. The sheer coldness of human nature and the hideousness of human greed were on full, agonizing display. In truth, tragedies like this, where excessive kindness only breeds bitter resentment, are never isolated incidents. They happen all the time. The real world is full of them. Countless brutal, real-life examples prove just how greedy and cold-hearted people can be. Okay, Chen Xin, a businessman from Zhanjiang, Guangdong, who spent 200 million yuan to build 258 luxury villas to give to his fellow villagers for free. Instead of being grateful, the villagers demanded even more properties, making one ridiculous greedy demand after another. 2829. In the end, they even vandalized the brand new villas. This shocking, absurd story was even documented and exposed by major national news outlets. Or look at actress Sun Yuli, who sponsored a struggling student named Sun Haitun for years. 32. The moment she stopped her financial aid, he turned on her, writing a massive smear piece accusing her of being a hypocrite. Then there's the story of two brothers in Hebei. The older brother had financially supported his younger brother for years, but the moment he fell on hard times and couldn't help, his own brother dragged him to court. The forced to plants. Every single one of these heartbreaking stories screams the exact same brutal truth. Giving endlessly without setting boundaries will never win you gratitude. It only breeds monstrous greed. When dealing with ungrateful people, no matter how much you sacrifice, you can never warm a heart that is frozen in selfishness. 41. Back in the hospital, the sharp, biting smell of disinfectant hung heavy. 42, 43. It filled the cold air, suffocatingly tense and heavy. 44. My father had just barely opened his eyes, waking from his coma. His temper is still as explosive as ever, his chest heaving violently, his brows locked in a tight, angry scowl. He keeps cursing those ungrateful villagers, spitting venom at how greedy and selfish they are. He is so worked up that his entire body is shaking uncontrollably. With just a slight movement, his wounds flare up, making him gasp and grimace in pain. Meanwhile, my mother is lying in the hospital bed. Her face is as pale as paper, completely drained of any color. The tears at the corners of her eyes have not stopped flowing. The horrific bruises covering her arms and legs are a gut-wrenching sight. Every single sigh she lets out is heavy with disappointment, heartbreak, and utter helplessness. The sheer despair in her eyes cuts through me like a knife. The girls from my live streaming team rushed over the moment they heard the news. Seeing the horrific state my parents are in, and hearing the whole truth of what those villagers did, their eyes instantly well up with tears, torn between boiling rage and deep heartache. Their tears stream down completely out of control. They are shaking all over with pure rage, yet they feel so completely powerless.
长球桥忘了买听门部
Has endured endless hardships alongside me. He has shed countless tears, but he has never once complained. Just a while ago, to get the packaging and shipping ready for a live stream, pre-graved nearly 40-degree heat, hauling crates of eggs back and forth in a suffocating, foul-smelling warehouse, while constantly double-checking orders. He was desperately pushing through his limits right before the heat stroke hit, even though his body was clearly failing him. When he finally collapsed to the ground, unconscious from the heat, his face was deathly pale, and he was drenched in cold sweat. After being rushed to the hospital, he only had time for 2 quick 4 drips and ignored the doctor's strict warnings to stay in bed. He drammed himself right back to the live stream set, terrified that any delay would hurt our egg sales. That day, he worked until late into the night, pushed to the absolute brink of exhaustion. He didn't even have the strength left to eat a single bite of dinner. Curled up right there on the chair, falling into a deep, exhausted sleep. She used to have such fair, clean skin and was such a cheerful, bubbly girl. But in just a few short months, the scorching sun has left her dark and haggard. Her hands are now covered in thick, rough calluses. Her once youthful face is filled with nothing but exhaustion and strain. Yet despite pouring her heart out and giving everything she had, all she got in return was utter betrayal from the very villagers she helped. Groundless, vicious accusations. She just sits there on a bench in the hospital corridor, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looks so incredibly hurt, confused, and filled with resentment. We poured our hearts out for them. We worked ourselves to the bone, got heat stroke, stayed up all night, and took all their abuse without a single How could they be so heartless? How could they be so ungrateful? Just as everyone is drowning in sadness, fury, and bitter disappointment,
Tom Xiaoxiao suddenly remembers something.
she quickly wipes the tears from her face, urging, Sister Wang Q, quick, look at this live stream. Zhang Kofan is doing a live stream right now, slandering you and twisting the facts. My mind races with confusion, forcing down the rage and the cold chill in my heart. I tap on the live stream link she sent me. It's her. She is actually live right now. On the screen, Jung Fufen looks nothing like the shameless, screaming maniac she was earlier today.
Gone is all that aggressive, unreasonable attitude.
Instead, she's put on this act, pretending she's the one who's been deeply wronged.
Looking so fragile and pitiful. She is sobbing hysterically into the camera.
Putting on a masterclass in acting.
It is absolutely sickening.
She is completely twisting the truth, fabricating lies, viciously claiming that I pocketed the villagers' hard-earned money and stole the profits for myself. She's accusing me of using charity to gain online fame, calling me a cold-blooded monster who doesn't care if the villagers live or die.
With tears streaming down her face, she rails against my supposed crimes, every single word designed to smear my name with baseless accusations.
As she gets more and more dramatic, she looks like she's about to faint.
Playing the ultimate victim, being bullied by everyone.
In the comments section, several villagers she conspired with are chiming in with sarcastic remarks, viciously steering the narrative
And deliberately inciting the online mob's fury against me.
He's out there ruthlessly whipping the online crowd into a frenzy,
completely clueless about the real story.
and those gullible people, easily misled by his one-sided lies, are falling hook, line, and sinker for his act.
Live chat is overflowing with vicious, hateful attacks against me.
Pointing fingers and dragging my name through the mud.
The reputation I worked so hard to build and protect is being utterly trampled in a split second, shattered into pieces.
Every single ounce of my hard work has turned into ammunition for them to smear me.
Staring at Zomblippi's fake, hideous face on the screen.
And thinking of my poor, injured parents lying in their hospital beds. In my loyal team crying tears of frustration right beside me. Remembering how my own devotion only bought me a heart full of scars.
The very last ounce of sympathy I had for these villagers, and my final shred of hope in humanity,
Completely vanishes, leaving nothing but a bone-chilling coldness and a fierce, ruthless resolve. I calmly wipe away the tears from the corners of my eyes.
my gaze instantly turning sharp and unwavering.
I look at the young girls on my team, and word by word, I deliver my orders.
My voice is ice cold as I command them. Change the live stream's refund policy. Instead of a 3-fold refund for bad products, make it a 10-fold refund.
Before this, the greedy villagers were so obsessed with making a quick buck that they completely threw away their morals, mixing cracked, rotten, and foul-smelling low-grade eggs into the premium batches. The percentage of bad eggs was shockingly high.
1/3 of all orders had major quality issues. Every single time customers received rotten eggs and filed a complaint for compensation, I was the one paying out of my own pocket, using my tiny profit margin of just a few cents to quietly pay the refunds.
Cleaning up the villagers' messy mistakes and absorbing all the financial risks myself.
But now, I am done holding back.
I will not compromise anymore, and I am definitely not cleaning up after them.
Let them face the consequences of their own greed. Immediately after,
I called Director Zhao, a longtime business partner of mine.
before I can even say a word, his voice crackles through the line, heavy with frustration and annoyance. Su Wanqing, what on earth is wrong with you?
Our factory only needs 2 or 3 tons of eggs a month. I only stretched our requirements to help you out.
And ordered 5 tons of cargo from your supplier. But of all the eggs delivered, more than half are completely worthless.
Rotten, spoiled garbage.
You forced us to shut down our entire assembly line just to strip and deep clean the machinery.
Do you have any idea how much time, labor, and money we wasted because of this?
And now, we're stuck sorting through the eggs.
On top of that, we had to spend extra money just to switch our automated assembly lines to manual sorting.
Our costs skyrocketed several times over.
Tell me, how are we supposed to fix this?
How? How are we going to solve this?
I listened closely to his complaints.
Director Zhao, I am so sorry.
I offered him a sincere apology.
My voice thick with guilt. I caused such massive losses to your operation. Every single cent of those losses.
I will personally cover it all.
But I'm also calling today to formally notify you. My voice went ice cold,
And with absolute resolve, I continued. From this moment on,
as for this village's eggs, I will completely cut ties.
I won't interfere.
And they have absolutely nothing
To do with me.
anymore.
Director Zhao was a sharp, capable man. He'd immediately read between the lines. think he too had long lost his patience with the dishonest villagers and their tainted products.
From now on, I'm only taking inventory that comes directly through you,
he declared right then and there. As for the village's eggs, I wouldn't take them even if they were practically giving them away. Hanging up the phone, I looked at my team, a cold, mocking sneer curling on my lips. There wasn't a single shred of warmth left in my eyes. In the past, I poured my heart out, endlessly bearing your risks, cleaning up your messes, and bailing you out of trouble.
And what did I get in return? Betrayal.
Malicious slander.
Starting today,
The consequences of their mistakes, the bitter fruit they sowed, they must bear and pay for themselves. All the perks I fought so hard to get them, all the conveniences I brought their way, they will have to pay them back in spades.
once I upgraded our policy from 3 times refund for fakes to 10 times refund,
A massive tidal wave of 10 times refund requests instantly flooded my live stream backend. Customers who had previously bought the low-quality eggs and planned to just let it slide now stepped forward one after another to claim their full 10-fold refunds.
In just 2 or 3 short days, nearly $7 million in public live stream sales revenue was the entire income from selling eggs.
Due to the payout cycle, it hadn't been distributed to the villagers yet. But now, it was almost completely drained by the massive compensation payout, leaving less than $100,000 in the end. On the 5th day, the scheduled payout day arrived. The village chief and Jonathan rounded up half the village. A massive crowd marched over and blocked the village committee office. Their eyes were filled with pure greed, and their faces were filled with impatience, waiting to get paid. They fully expected to walk away with millions and line their pockets to the brim. I arrived, right on time. I transferred the remaining $100,000 from the account, down to the very last cent, into Jiang Guofin's card. The moment Jiang Guofin saw the transfer amount, she froze, her face twisted in complete shock and disbelief. She suddenly snapped her head up, staring at me with wide eyes. She screeched at the top of her lungs, her voice shrill with disbelief.
Didn't Su Manqing say there was nearly $7 million in the public account?
How is there only $100,000 left? The moment those words left her mouth, the massive committee room fell deathly quiet. Could hear a pin drop. Every single villager's gaze snapped onto me. Their eyes burned with suspicion, rage, greed, and paranoia, as if I had actually pocketed their millions and was some kind of unforgivable monster. Seeing my silence, Jiang Guofin raised her voice even higher, her tone sharp and venomous. Where did the rest of the money go? We're not even done with you pocketing the price difference yet. Do you really have the audacity to blatantly steal public funds? I looked at her calmly, my voice cool and utterly unfazed. Zhangvo, stop throwing baseless accusations and twisting the truth. This is all that's left of the $7 million. The rest of that money has absolutely nothing to do with me. Where on earth did the money go? Tell us the truth, right now. I slowly stood up and swept my sharp gaze across everyone in the room. My voice was clear, loud, and firm. It was all spent on compensation. Then where did the money go? Spit it out, right now. The village chief's face was so incredibly dark, it looked like a storm was about to break. His brow was furrowed in a deep, tight scowl. He demanded in a cold, threatening, low voice. I slowly stood up. My sharp gaze swept over every single person in the room. It's all paid off. My voice rang out, clear, loud, and firm. Before anyone could even react, I kept going. You villagers were so blinded by greed that you mixed tons of rotten, spoiled eggs into the shipments. Every single one of you here knows exactly what you did, don't you? Who dares to stand up, look me in the eye, and swear they had no part in this? Before, it was my team cleaning up your mess and taking all the risks, paying those refunds out of our own pockets, and constantly bailing you out. But since you all think I'm the one taking advantage and making dirty money, then this time, the compensation should come right out of your own pockets. Pay for it yourselves. You reaped what you sowed, so you have to take responsibility for your own actions. You have absolutely no one else to blame. Every word I said was like a heavy blow, stepping straight into their guilty hearts. The villagers looked at one another in stunned silence, their eyes shifting nervously, completely consumed by guilt. Not a single soul dared to deny that they had rigged the goods. The room fell dead silent for several minutes. It was an awkward, suffocating silence. Having his sore spot exposed, the village chief flew into a rage out of sheer embarrassment. Slamming his hand on the table, he roared, "Su Manqing, cut the crap and stop making excuses. You're talking absolute nonsense. You definitely pocketed all that money yourself." I let out a cold laugh and looked at him with ice-cold eyes. Every single cent of those funds has a complete, detailed record in the system. I can pull it up and show it to everyone right now.
For you all to check.
I haven't taken a single penny of the live stream sales revenue.
Not a single cent.
The remaining 100 and odd thousand has already been transferred to Secretary Zhang. See for yourselves.
With that, I turned around to leave, only to be blocked at the door by a mob of villagers.
They looked fierce and hostile, itching to make a move. It was obvious they wanted to get violent, but I didn't back down.
I immediately raised my phone and shouted, "Go ahead, try laying a finger on me." I'd already told my team, if I'm not out of here in half an hour, they're calling the police immediately. When that happens, none of you are getting away. Every single one of you will face the full force of the law. That finally got through to Zhang Gufen. She realized things had gotten completely out of hand. She quickly barked at me. "Suan Qing, who gave you the right to use public funds for compensation without permission?" Her double standards were so ridiculous. I literally laughed out loud. I scoffed
And said in a freezing tone, "Our customers bought rotten eggs and demanded refunds.
So I'm using the money from those exact egg sales to pay them back.
That is perfectly right and proper, and entirely reasonable."
After that, I moved my parents to the town and get them away from this heartbreaking place.
So they could finally live out their years in peace.
As we packed up, my parents didn't look sad to leave at all.
All they felt was complete betrayal, deep disappointment, and a sense of relief. It was obvious that they had absolutely no love left for this village,
Or these toxic villagers.
Our new home was bright and peaceful, finally giving them some distance from those painful memories and toxic people.
Once my parents were settled in,
I got right back to work, leading my team back into live stream selling. We took on several campaigns to promote local agricultural products. Most of them were to help honest, hardworking, and truly grateful farmers who were struggling to sell their fruits, vegetables, and grains. Unlike the greedy, selfish people back in my old village, these farmers were humble and incredibly hardworking. They genuinely appreciated our help. We helped them clear out their unsold stock and opened up new markets for them, leaving them overwhelmed with gratitude. Treating each other with genuine sincerity not only earned us a decent profit, but also brought back a warmth that we hadn't felt in a long time. It was respect and real recognition. No more heartbreak and no more betrayal.
in this life, the most brutal, eye-opening truth is this:
A small favor breeds a grateful ally, but too much generosity only breeds a bitter enemy. When you give someone a tiny bit of help in their hour of need, they'll be filled with gratitude and remember it for the rest of their lives. But if you have no boundaries and keep pouring your heart and soul into them for too long, the moment you stop or fail to satisfy their endless, greedy demands, not only will they show zero gratitude, but they'll actually harbor deep resentment. They'll bite the hand that fed them, treat you like their worst enemy, hurt you without a second thought, and smear your name maliciously. This kind of tragic human nature is never just an isolated incident. It happens all around us, every single day.
I took all the cash we made from our recent live streaming sales, packed it into thick red envelopes, and handed it out to the girls on my team.
They've worked themselves to the bone for me,
Taking all the blame and putting up with so much disrespect.
yet they never once doubted me or walked away. Not a single complaint.
A bond like that is more precious than anything, and they deserve my absolute best in return.
Once word got out that I had completely cut ties with my own village, the chief of the neighboring village who runs their poultry farms came looking for me. He was incredibly polite and sincere, showing nothing but deep respect. Right there at the dinner table, he made a solemn promise. "Miss Sue, as long as you're willing to help our village sell our eggs, you can name whatever terms you want. We won't haggle over a single thing." In the past, our two villages had deep-seated grudges over land, water rights, and competition in the poultry business. We were constantly at each other's throats. Back then, I would have rejected him without a second thought. But this time, I agreed right on the spot. I demanded a 20-cent cut for every single egg and complete control over all live stream promotions. All labor and customer service costs were fully covered by the neighboring village.
Their village chief didn't hesitate for a single second and happily agreed right then and there.
After all, we were right in the dead of summer.
With the scorching heat, eggs spoil incredibly fast. If they ended up with an unsold backlog, the losses would be devastating. It could even trigger a disease outbreak among the chickens, leaving the villagers with absolutely nothing. In the past, plenty of farmers had their produce pile up, only to watch a whole year of hard work go completely down the drain. The neighboring village knew exactly what was at stake, and since they trusted my abilities, they naturally didn't dare to drag their feet. Once the partnership was locked in, the live streams were quickly launched in full swing.
with their chief repeatedly demanding strict supervision.
The villagers were incredibly disciplined. No one dared to sneak in even a single bad egg. They strictly controlled the quality from start to finish, making sure every single egg was fresh and premium. The entire live streaming process went incredibly smoothly. Sales skyrocketed, and everyone involved made a killing. They were endlessly grateful to me and treated me with the utmost respect. Just as the live streams were running smoothly and sales were hitting new heights day after day,
With a tone mixed with helplessness and mockery, she said, "Sister Wan Qing,
Zhonggofen from your village is copying you and started live streaming to sell things too." I didn't even have to think to know what was happening. Over the last few months, the village must have piled up another huge backlog of eggs. In this blistering heat, the backlog would only get worse and worse. Having no other choice, they resorted to copying my live streams. But when I opened up Zhongfeng's live stream to take a look,
the room was incredibly dead and pathetic.
there were only a handful of viewers, with zero interaction for hours, and absolutely no one placing any orders. It was totally lifeless. She wanted to copy my exact business model, but she had no operational skills, no traffic resources, no quality control, and zero reputation built up. In the end, their pathetic attempt to copy me was a total failure. After an entire day, they only managed to make a handful of sales. Compared to the tons of egg inventory piling up in the village, it was just a drop in the bucket. It did absolutely nothing to solve their crisis. On the third day, while I was busy in the middle of a live stream explaining our products, the village chief and Zhang Kufang led a massive crowd of villagers, aggressively storming into the neighboring village. They barged straight into my live streaming venue. The usual arrogance on their faces was completely gone, replaced only by sheer anxiety, desperation, and greed. "Su Wenqing, stop whatever you're doing right now and get back to selling our goods." The moment he saw me, the village chief demanded in an entitled, commanding tone, "As long as you sell off all the eggs, the village won't hold you responsible for that price difference." Before I could even utter a word, the village chief quickly added, his voice dripping with condescension, "But this time, the eggs will be 60 cents each, and every single cent we make goes to the villagers." I stood up, staring at their fake, greedy faces. I felt absolutely nothing inside, and spoke in a cold, indifferent voice. "Have you all forgotten what I said?" The crowd froze, exchanging confused glances. Clearly, they had long forgotten my warning, and only cared about getting me to work for free. I said, "If you want me to keep live streaming for you, fine." But I poured my blood, sweat, and tears into building this account, and it needs to make money. My team members have families to feed and bills to pay. We can't just work for free. So for this live stream, I am taking a 50% cut of the profits. 50% of the profits?
Su Wenqing, have you lost your mind?
Her face twisted in shock, fury, and sheer disbelief, as if my demand was the most outrageous, unreasonable thing she had ever heard. I sneered and shook my head, my eyes filled with cold mockery. Other streamers take 60 to 70% of the profits, or even more. I am only asking for 50%. I only tolerated you this long because we're from the same village. I've already been more than fair. Back then, over that measly 10-cent price difference, you all accused me of making dirty money and being utterly selfish. Fine. Now I'm going to make my money right out in the open, with absolutely nothing to hide. That way, you won't have to gossip and badmouth me behind my back, or maliciously drag my name through the mud. How can you completely throw away our ties as villagers? Demanding 50% of the profits? How are we supposed to survive? That has nothing to do with me. If you don't like it, pack up and leave. Don't waste my time while I'm trying to sell these goods. And don't mess up my business. I spread my hands open, calm and completely unfazed. The neighboring village chief stood to the side, looking utterly helpless, but he didn't say a word. Our village chief wanted to keep pestering me, trying to wear me down. Seeing my cold, unyielding stance, he was forced to soften his tone. Squeezing out a fake, flattering smile, he said, "Wan Qing, I know you're angry and feel incredibly wronged. Honestly, anyone in your position would feel terrible after going through all this." After a brief silence, he pulled a red envelope from his pocket and held it out to me. "About that clash we had with your parents last time. We were just too hot-headed and acted completely out of line. So, I'm here to offer you a proper apology. You've always been the bigger person, so please don't hold a grudge. Don't be angry anymore." Looking at the red envelope he was holding out, I sneered inwardly.
finding the whole thing utterly pathetic and hilarious.
The village chief shot a sharp look at Zhang Pipen.
Although her face was tight with resentment and reluctance, she had to bite the bullet and step forward. Wanqing, the things I said to smear your name online, they were just angry words spoken in the heat of the moment. I didn't mean any of it. Please, you can't take it to heart.
Don't lower yourself to my level.
I nearly laughed out loud from pure anger, feeling nothing but utter disgust and contempt. The village chief brought a mob and brutally beat my parents,
Leaving them hospitalized with severe injuries. They trashed my home, looted our belongings, and did every wicked thing imaginable.
And now, they think they can use a measly red envelope and a few cheap, insincere apologies to just wipe the slate clean, to act like absolutely nothing happened?
Do they really think I, Suwansi, am a pushover they can just walk all over?
That I'm that easy to bully?
Village chief, I said 50% of the profits.
Not a single penny less, or the deal is off. My tone is cold and strictly business,
Leaving absolutely no room for negotiation.
my gaze is unwavering and beyond question. The village chief's face instantly turns incredibly pale, twisting with embarrassment and rage. His eyes flash with anger,
Resentment, greed, and utter helplessness.
Sonun-chin, have you forgotten what you promised the villagers?
that you'd help everyone sell their goods?
That you'd help everyone live a better life? How can you go back on your word like this?
How can you be so hypocritical? Can't you show some understanding for everyone's struggles?
I can no longer hold back, and I burst out laughing at these shameless, truth-twisting,
And utterly selfish words. My laughter is filled with deep disappointment, coldness, and pure mockery. Show understanding? Do you people even deserve to use those words? When my parents were brutally beaten by you and lay unconscious in the hospital? And when you trashed my home, did any of you show me an ounce of understanding?
I worked myself to the bone helping you guys. Suffering heat stroke, pulling all-nighters, and taking your abuse without a single complaint.
Did you ever care about my hard work or my sacrifices?
I poured my heart out and gave you everything I had, only to be met with backstabbing and betrayal. You smeared my name and threw baseless accusations at me.
Did you ever think about my pain?
Or how utterly heartbroken I was.
Tang Xiaoxiao steps up, shielding me behind her. Her eyes are ice cold, and her voice is laced with fury. Don't you dare think Wanqing is an easy target. Yes, we did promise to help you sell your products,
But we did that out of the goodness of our hearts. It was purely a favor.
I'm not going to keep giving unconditionally just to let you hurt me over and over again.
And I'm definitely not going to swallow my pride and keep slaving away for free after the way you've treated me.
Zhang Gufan's face darkened instantly. The groveling and begging she just did made her feel like she had lost all face.
At this point, she couldn't keep up the act any longer.
She gritted her teeth and sneered.
Her voice dripping with resentment and threats. The world keeps spinning without you.
Think this village can't survive without you. Don't think there's no one else who can help us.
Got get too cocky and arrogant. After throwing out a few harsh, stubborn threats,
Yang Guan and the village chief led the angry crowd of villagers.
cursing and swearing as they turned to leave. The villagers who followed kept hurling abuse as they walked away.
All kinds of nasty, vicious insults echoed through the air. They're completely unrepentant.
Unreasonable and utterly selfish, cold-hearted attitude
Made even the neighboring villagers frown in disgust.
Their faces were written with pure contempt. They are way too much. They're so incredibly ungrateful.
Tai Chazao was shaking with rage, her entire body trembling uncontrollably.
Don't worry. They're just running their mouths and acting tough right now. It won't be long before they come crawling back to beg me. And each time, they'll be even more pathetic and more desperate than the last. And things turned out exactly as I predicted, down to the very last detail. Half a month later, the village chief and his group came to find me again. But this time, they had none of their former arrogance or hostility.
Their confidence was completely gone. Every single one of them looked exhausted, their faces lined with worry,
And their eyes completely lifeless. They practically dripped with despair and helplessness, reduced to the absolute lowest point.
Over the past half a month,
The village chief and Jiangfeng had run themselves ragged, trying absolutely everything.
they begged anyone and everyone, desperately searching for a buyer, but came home completely empty-handed.
They hadn't made a single bit of progress. They tried reaching out to other live streamers,
But their demands were absolutely brutal.
they wanted way more than 50% of the profits. There was just no way they could accept that.
They simply couldn't afford it.
Zhang Gufang even tried live streaming herself every single day, shouting at her screen from morning till night. Her throat got so hoarse. and painful. She could barely squeeze out a word.
But her stream remained a ghost town. Not a single soul tuned in.
And there wasn't a single order. Absolutely nothing worked.
Watching the stock pile up like mountains in the warehouse.
With more and more eggs going to waste, the villagers completely panicked.
They were at the end of their rope, on the absolute brink of collapse.
The moment the village chief saw me, he threw all his pride and dignity out the window. He rushed forward and grabbed my hands in a tight grip,
with tears streaming down his weathered face.
He was sobbing uncontrollably, completely begging and broken.
My dear, please. Good child.
I'm begging you, help the villagers. Everyone relies on these eggs just to get by, to feed their families.
When we built the chicken farm,
everyone poured their entire life savings,
absolutely everything they owned, into it. We are truly cornered. We won't survive this.
And that Director Zhao,
no matter what we say, he only wants the stock from you. We gagged him until we were blue in the face and ran ourselves ragged.
But he wouldn't even let us through the door. We really have no options left. Reduced to absolute desperation,
stripped of all dignity, and pushed to the brink.
The completely hopeless Gong Bukong also cast aside all her pride and arrogance, pleading with me.
Wanqing, can we please talk about this?
What if you take 40% of the profits and leave the remaining 60% for the villagers? That way, everyone can survive.
Everyone can still make a decent living. Is that okay? I simply shook my head.
I didn't say a word. My stance was clear, absolutely unyielding.
Everyone looked at each other in dismay.
Their faces were filled with utter despair. No one dared to say another word.
Zhang Yuaiping had no other choice.
She could only grit her teeth and nod in defeat. Fine, then take 50%, okay?
I smiled faintly.
My eyes were calm, but tinged with a cold indifference.
50% was last time's price.
This time, I want 60% of the profits.
Drunlifen froze. A look of sheer shock washed over her face. In absolute disbelief, she stood there completely stunned, unable to believe her own ears. 60% of the profits.
That will barely leave anything for the villagers. Prices change by the day.
When the market changes, the price naturally changes too.
Right now, you're the ones begging me.
Not the other way around. The neighboring village offered me a 20-cent cut on each item, and they were incredibly polite and grateful to me. You're the ones who taught me that kindness is never appreciated, and that generosity must have boundaries and a sharp edge. I have over 20 million followers. A single live stream can easily pull in over 1 million. Asking for 60% of your profits is not asking for too much.
Hearing this, Anne Liu in the crowd
collapsed straight onto the ground, slapping her thighs frantically, squeezing out tears in an instant, and wailing at the top of her lungs.
She threw a massive tantrum, rolling on the ground. The big-time influencer is bullying us.
Wanqing, you're trying to drive us country folks to our deaths.
You're not leaving us any way to survive.
The other villagers swarmed around her, some of them begging me desperately.
Some begged and pleaded, while others openly threatened me.
Some hurled insults, while others kept trying to badger me.
They tried to play the emotional card, screaming that if they couldn't survive, they'd drag me down with them.
Emotions were running high, and the scene descended into absolute chaos as the crowd grew more and more hostile and looked ready to turn violent.
The chief of the neighboring village suddenly shouted out. Hearing this, the villagers working in the nearby fields dropped what they were doing and rushed over to surround us.
They shielded me in the center,
staring back with watchful eyes.
Their attitude, unyielding. What do you think you're doing? You think you can just come to our village and start trouble? Who Miss Su chooses to help sell products is completely her choice.
No one has the right to interfere.
And no one can force her. Don't think we don't know how horribly you treated Miss Su in the past. You're nothing but a bunch of ungrateful, selfish, cold-hearted hypocrites. Ending up like this is entirely your own fault.
You deserve it.
Fearing that the situation would escalate into a violent clash, their chief could only wave his hand in defeat and lead his people away. That night, my mother called me. Her voice sounded torn, filled with hesitation and sympathy. She said their village chief had gone to our house, sobbing and begging my parents for help. My parents have always been soft-hearted, so they try to persuade me to help them. She told me the livelihoods of hundreds of people in that village depend on these eggs. We can't just stand by and watch them ruin themselves, can we?
Wanqing, please, just think about it again. Just as my heart softened,
and I began to hesitate on whether to agree, the warehouse where the neighboring village stored their eggs suddenly burst into massive flames. Fire lit up the night sky, sending thick billows of smoke pouring into the air. The blaze was ferocious, and it spread with terrifying speed. Many villagers who were still inside, busy sorting and counting the eggs, were severely burned.
Screams of agony filled the air
as they writhed in unbearable pain. To make matters worse, Tang Xiaochao, who was helping log the shipments, was trapped deep inside the burning warehouse.
Everyone banded together, fighting the flames with everything they had, until they finally put the fire out.
But nearly 2 tons of eggs stored in the warehouse had been burned to a crisp.
Reduced completely to ash.
The damage is catastrophic and completely irreversible.
When Tang Xiaochao was dragged out of the raging fire, she was covered in horrific wounds.
Her clothes were burnt to shreds,
And her skin was severely charred in multiple places.
she was trembling violently from the excruciating pain.
Tears streaming down her face.
Wak Jingjing, it hurts. It hurts so bad.
Seeing Xishao on such agonizing pain, my heart shattered, and I burst into tears. Soon, over a dozen ambulances and 4 fire trucks rushed to the scene.
Screaming sirens, desperate wails, and chaotic shouts clashed in the air.
The scene was absolute chaos, and it was utterly heartbreaking. The neighboring villagers couldn't do anything to help. They could only stand outside the burning warehouse, listening to the muffled, painful sobs echoing from the crowd.
I gripped Tang Xiaochao's hand as tightly as I could,
Comforting her over and over. Her face was deathly pale, and she couldn't stop shaking. Once the fire was finally put out, I went with the officers to check the security room.
On the surveillance footage,
The shadowy figure was creeping around suspiciously, carrying a bucket and splashing liquid all over the warehouse.
even though his face was covered.
I recognized him instantly. It was Zhang Gufan. The chief of the neighboring village was so furious, he wanted to gather a mob to hunt him down. But I stopped him. I was so angry my legs turned to jelly, and I could barely stand. Just then, a doctor called out, "Mrs.
The child's condition has stabilized."
Tang Xiaochao's quiet sobbing echoed from the hospital room. Fortunately, the fire was put out quickly,
And Tang Xiaochao only had minor burns before being discharged. An officer then told me, "Ms. Wu, the surveillance footage has been secured as evidence."
We'll take our leave now. With the surveillance footage as solid proof,
I tried to deny it at first, until the officers matched his fingerprints on the bucket. Faced with undeniable proof,
Zhang Gufang broke down in tears and confessed to everything. He saw that his village's eggs weren't selling.
while the neighboring village's business was booming thanks to my live streams.
He was consumed by extreme jealousy.
So he decided to get revenge on me and the neighboring village. He never expected to cause such a massive disaster. I pulled every single string I had and put the word out to every local livestream host, blacklisting his village from any future collaborations.
Since I've always built great relationships in the industry, everyone agreed on the spot without a second thought. Besides, they'd already heard about what happened in that village.
No one wanted to deal with people who had zero integrity.
Just like that, the village's sales channels were completely cut off.
Furious, the villagers stormed into my old house and completely trashed it.
By the time they left,
My parents' lifelong hard work had been smashed to pieces.
thank goodness I had already moved my parents to town.
Otherwise, I dread to think what would have happened to them.
In the villagers' eyes, I was the heartless, ungrateful monster. They hurled every vile, disgusting insult they could think of at me.
As the weather grew hotter and hotter, the village chief desperately begged anyone who would listen.
He was even willing to give up 60% of the profits just to get live streamers to sell their products.
But absolutely no one would take the job.
Meanwhile, over in the neighboring village, I had already sold out all of their eggs.
Meanwhile, the backlog of eggs in our own village started rotting in massive batches. They were completely ruined.
Panicking, the village chief sold off a massive load of the rotten eggs at dirt cheap prices without even checking them.
As a result, a ton of people got food poisoning. They were sued, exposed all over the internet, and the police got involved. The whole thing blew up.
To quiet the storm, the village chief had no choice but to pay massive compensation. Backed into a corner, the desperate village chief came crawling back to me. The moment he saw me, he dropped to his knees, sobbing and begging, "Uncle Van Chin, I beg you. Half the eggs in the warehouse are already rotten,
And the chickens at the farm just won't stop laying more.
I really don't know what to do anymore. Please, save us." The chief looked like he had aged overnight, his hair turning completely white.
If this were the old me, my heart might have softened.
But after everything they put me through, my heart was absolute ice. I sneered, shaking my head slowly. "Even if you offered me 90% of the profits, I wouldn't help you sell a single solitary egg. Everything that's happening to you now is entirely your own doing. The real reason this village can't sell its eggs is because you greedy villagers completely destroyed your own reputation. First, you mixed in rotten eggs just to make a quick buck. Then you dumped spoiled, toxic eggs onto the market at dirt cheap prices. You didn't just rip off the distributors.
You poisoned innocent consumers. Some of them are still in the hospital fighting for their lives.
No matter how much the village chief begged and wept, I didn't budge an inch. All he could do was leave, utterly devastated.
Soon after, the second and third batches of eggs all went completely bad. The village chief desperately tried to salvage the situation.
But with the endless stream of eggs piling up, He was completely helpless. He had no choice but to sell them off dirt cheap. He lost money on every single egg he sold.
But if he didn't sell them, he feared a massive outbreak of bird flu. That would destroy the entire farm.
The village was trapped in a vicious, never-ending cycle.
6 months later, the villagers couldn't hold out any longer.
The village chief had to sell off all the chickens,
Shut down the farm.
And file for bankruptcy.
Every single villager who invested lost every penny they had.
Many of them even lost their homes.
In the end, the village was drowning in debt.
And the authorities became daily visitors. Meanwhile, the neighboring village made an absolute fortune selling eggs. They even expanded their poultry farm, with our village completely out of the competition.
The neighboring village monopolized the entire local egg market.
To show their gratitude to me,
They offered me a 30% share of their profits.
and invited me to be their exclusive, full-time live stream host.
Your village chief got into a massive brawl with the villagers. He was just rushed to the hospital.
I heard he's in critical condition. Who knows if he'll even make it? We brought this entirely on themselves.
From that day on,
Our village earned a new nickname, the Deadbeat Village.